This is it, folks. This is history as big as history can be made. This is landing men on the moon. This is proving aliens exist. This is proving an alien was real 900 years ago and lived and died and was buried on this earth.
Mr. Lloyd Pye, seated.
Folks, I don't know how much of that I'm going to repeat during this presentation because I don't know what he was saying. So you're just going to have to bear with me as I repeat things that he might have said in that introduction. I want to thank him for that. Thank Phil for having me here to do this, to share this information with you all. I thank you all for coming, obviously. You have to make an effort to do these things. Can everybody hear me back there in the back? If not, just feel free about moving forward. This is about my speaking tone, so if you're having any trouble at all, there are plenty of seats up here. Just move forward, please. Now, before we get into it and get started, I want to share some information with you because it's important, and you'll see by the end of this presentation. By the end of this, you're going to want, I think, to share this information that I'm going to give you with friends and people. And when you do that, I guarantee you that the very first thing they're going to do when you try to tell them about it is they're going to go to Wikipedia to find out about the Starchild and find out about me. Now, I call it Wackipedia, not Wikipedia, because it's just wacky. Anything to do with alternative knowledge, anything at all, you cannot trust, because Wikipedia is not dedicated to finding the truth. You think they are. They're not. They are dedicated to supporting the mainstream science view of everything. So that anything at all that veers from that, as all alternative knowledge does, gets hammered. And they do not let the truth go in. They give those articles over to administrators within their system. You try to make a change on a Wikipedia thing that is being dominated by one of them, and it'll be changed back within an hour or two, if that long. They have things that the administrators do in their computers that let them know when any change has been made on a, quote, sensitive page. And I am, because of my profile and because of the profile of Starchild, we are super sensitive. So they're all over us. So what I have done, and what I want you to keep in mind, is those two websites. If someone wants to read the Wikipedia article about the Starchild, they can go to the Starchild Project, and I promise you, every single word is on that site, but the truth is under each line, each phrase, each paragraph, whatever. I tell you the truth, and I tell them the truth. And also with the Lloyd Pye website, if they check on me, yeah, it's a little louder now. If they check on me, same thing. Every single word that's on the Wikipedia article, and then my truth, I tell you the truth. And all of that, all of Lloyd Pye, all of the Starchild Skull, is built around one article written by a man named Stephen Novella for his own New England Skeptical Society in 1999. And you'll hear what happened in 1999. We had a DNA test, the first DNA test. The answer came in, said the Starchild was human. It turned out later that it wasn't, but that was the answer that science wanted. And so they latched onto it, and they won't let it go. And in 2006, I contacted Novella after it had been proven wrong, and I said, you really need to change this article, you need to update it, you need to pull it, you need to do something. And he wrote back and he said the article stands as written, but then he changed the copyright date from 1999 to 2006. So if you go look at it now, it'll have a copyright of 2006, but it's still the 1999 article. And everybody uses that as in the mainstream, all the skeptics, all the critics. If you go out there and you look on the sites, the wars of words that go on between people about the Starchild and those who defend it and those who attack it. And those who attack it always use these articles. If you go on my website, you can read my own and the Novella article, word for word, with the truth underneath. So if you want to know the truth, if you want your friends to know the truth, that's the way to do it. Otherwise, they're going to come back at you and just say, what did you tell me about that for? Because it's a human and that's it. Okay? So with that said, let's dive into the actual presentation, which starts in Mexico in about 1930. Now, it begins here about 100 miles southwest of Chihuahua in 1930. By the way, this is where I live. I grew up in Louisiana and now live here right on the water. So I have lived through the oil spill. I have lived through the oil spill. I've lived through Katrina and the oil spill. That's why I'm here instead of here. So anyway, I've just been very unlucky here the last few years with weather. But anyway, so 100 miles southwest of Chihuahua, near the Copper Canyon area, a young girl from Ciudad Juarez is right across the border from El Paso. That's where El Paso, Texas is. And her family had come across the border and eventually became American citizens. And she was by that time about 13, 14, 15 years old. And the family was going back to the village for the first time since, because there would be no problem moving across the border and all that with her and her siblings. So when they got there, the kids were all told, do not go into the mine tunnels and caves in this area because it's high desert. If you know northern Arizona, Grand Canyon, if you've never been there, you've seen pictures of it. It's dry scrubland. So naturally you tell a teenager what not to do, and she started scheming immediately to do it. So she got a large basket and told them she was going to go out picking berries or looking for fruit and things, and she just hauled it as far as she could get away from the village to do some exploring on her own, and she found a mine tunnel. And she went in and she found far enough in to where she could still see clearly what was going on, about 50 feet in. She saw a human skeleton lying on its back on the floor of the mine tunnel. Now, a cave, we all know the difference. A cave is all big and squirrely. A mine tunnel is, anybody can see the difference. So she saw that. She saw it laying on the ground. She got a little closer and she saw that there was a mound of dirt beside the one lying on its back. And so she thought that looked like a grave, and she got a little closer and she said she noticed a misshapen hand extending out of the dirt of what looked like a grave. And sure enough, clearly something was in there. And that misshapen hand, she noticed, was wrapped around the upper arm bone of the skeleton lying on its back on the floor of the mine tunnel. So when she got a little closer, she realized that the dirt was, still clumped and loose. If it's in a mine tunnel, there's no raining to compact it or anything like that. She thought, I could probably scrape it out. And she did. She scraped it out with her hands very easily. And she exposed another skeleton, which she said had a misshapen body. That's all she said. Because she was describing this much later in life, when she had no idea that the few things she was going to say about it would then later become important after her death. So she recovered both skeletons with the idea of sneaking them back into the States and maybe donating them to her high school. Back then, they always had a skeleton on a rod in the biology department. I don't know, some of y'all are too young for that. But so she thought, there'd be some some degree of coolness to that. So she gathered all of the bones into the basket, but without a plan for how to do this, how to sneak them in. So rather than just waltz into the village with them, she found a ravine with a tree overhanging it, the roots had been washed away and opened up, so it made like a shelf, a nice perfect shelf with some roots. She tucked all the bones up under there. Brilliant idea, not wonderful hiding place. Except that night, torrential rain came, and for the next 2 days it rained really hard. When she could get there a day or so after that, they were all washed away. The water had risen, as it does. That's what makes those ravines. That's what washed the land from underneath the roots of the tree, and they were gone. So she walked downstream, and she found in a bush the 2 skulls, and one of the misshapen one had its lower face knocked off except for a piece of maxilla that was detached but there, and it lost its cheekbones in front of its face, as you see, and the human had lost one of its cheekbones in the tumble to get to that point. So she was happy to have the skulls. So she took them back to El Paso. Easy to sneak 2 skulls in. So they became souvenirs to her. She assumed it was just a deformed human head. But they were her souvenirs, and they were cool, and she liked them. And she shellacked them, put them in a cardboard box, kept them her whole life. Early 90s, she's dying. She decides, like you would with a pet, she wants to find a home for them. Her husband doesn't like them. So she asks friends, and through a series of friends, they end up with Ray and Melanie Young, who I heard their name anyway, so I know he mentioned those. A couple in El Paso, Texas. Now, the reason they offered them to Melanie was because she had been a neonatal nurse for like 15 years, so she was very familiar with human deformity. And as she looked at that one and held it, she said to her husband, this is not human deformity as I understand it. The bone is too light, all of the features are different, and you'll hear why and all that. And she said, and look, it's got that crease in the top of the head, it's got those big bulging parietals. They were both members of MUFON in El Paso. That's the Mutual UFO Network. They both knew about aliens. So it was just an odd coincidence of circumstance. So she said, I think that skull would fit perfectly in the head of a gray. Because you all know gray aliens, I'm sure the prototypical look of that is what's called a heart-shaped face. They have a crease here, they have a bulge here, and they have a very narrow lower face, heart-shaped. And she said it has all of that. I think it could be the skull of a gray alien. And so Ray said, yeah, it could be. How do we do that? So they put the word out through MUFON, who in the field of alternative knowledge in this country knows about skulls. And my name came up because at that point, the book that I had written was called Everything You Know Is Wrong, and I hope you mentioned something about that. And it was about human origins and hominoids and things like that. And in talking about the hominoids, I talked a lot about skulls. So that was how they called me in. I took a look at it. I said, well, it's probably a deformity, almost certainly a deformity. I don't know what kind. I've never seen any of this before, but the odds on it being an alien, I think, are just zillion to 1. And so let's go with the assumption that it's a deformity, but I'll take it out and I'll confirm what that deformity is. And I said it shouldn't take more than a few months, 6 months at max. And here I am. It'll be 12 years in February. So I was completely wrong about that time estimate. But it turned out to be a lot more complex than I thought it would be. Nonetheless, so I took it out and began the process of finding out about its physiology. And that was a long, complicated, convoluted process. Well, let's start with looking at the front view. Now, these are the real ones. These are copies. These are stereolithographic copies, what you see up here and what you will hold. They're exact copies, I mean exact, as close as science can get them, same weight, same everything. But this is the real deal here. Now, if you notice, the differences are, and I can show you here with this, a normal human eye socket, see that? It's 2 inches, 2 knuckles deep on this earth. This is it, folks. This is history as big as history can be made. This is landing men on the moon. This is proving aliens exist. This is proving an alien was real 900 years ago and lived and died and was buried.
Mr. Lloyd Pye, be seated.